morning. It is 5:30 and I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Please, if you are able, stand and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next, I would look for an approval of the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda. Jim?
I move adoption of the agenda with the addition of the HR addendum to be added to item 7C that was located at our work location.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Jim and seconded by Nimal. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. The motion passes. Our agenda is approved. Next, we will move on to the recognition of the audience. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. Speakers must refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. This evening, one speaker has signed up to address the board. Each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. I will now call our first speaker to the podium, who is Devin Stachinski.
Devin Stachinski, HMR. A lot of fun things going on with schools today. West Fargo and their bond measure, and yeah, I got to hear about that all day. A couple of takeaways as an outsider watching the special board meeting last week, Monday. It appeared that the motion the board took was already pre-prepared, and thus it appeared that the board had already reached a decision for the grievance before the meeting had even took place. That's just how it looked from the outside. It may have been different. Something else of note, it seemed very much that the agreement with the FEA was violated in some capacity. And the other part that was most entertaining to me is the candidates who the FEA endorsed got voted against the FEA. I found that funny. On to tonight's agenda, though. Memo 45 for GP9. It appears that there's a communication breakdown between the president and some other members because you have conflicting compliance issues. 10, it's really GP10 in the same memo. It's really nice that the current president doesn't roll their eyes when members of the public speak. So section 1.1-2 gets a pass. Sections 1, 5, 13, and 16 remain lacking. Memo 40, page 19, the communication section requires improvement. Some members of the public are being ignored and not communicated with properly. Page 21, allocation of resources should be tracked along with educational metrics to track trending to see if successful. An annual report should be required to show if there is improvement with this method. Memo 51, the creation of AP 6523. I'm confused. The administration made it quite plain that they weren't going to inform parents if there was going to be any outing of said student, yet there's this whole section on that for parental notification. So what is the administration's actual position.
Thank you, Devin. We'll move on to reports, and then at 6 PM on the nose, we'll bounce back to the public hearing at wherever we are in the agenda. So any representatives from the FEA to address us this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the administration report from Dr. Gandhi.
Thank you. I'll first start by just, following our new process that we talked about at governance. In your board packet, there is a memo on administrative policies. We go through an annual process of updating our administrative policies, and we've informed you through that piece or that was part of your board material. So I'll first start by seeing if there's any questions around that, and then if not, I have just one more quick announcement. Alrighty. The only piece I really wanted to announce tonight is as you know, as most board members know, running board meetings take a lot of work and a lot of coordination as well. This is the last board meeting for one of our IT lead technician supporters, Liz Thompson. She's been behind the scenes working board meetings for a very, very, very long time, but she is going to be spending a lot of time with her grandkids and traveling moving forward, and she never gets to come out from behind the room, so I just wanted to acknowledge her, that she's still back there for her last board meeting, because we will miss her in retirement, but we're really happy that she gets to travel and spend time with her grandkids as well. So that's it for my announcement today. Thank you.
That is great. Thank you so much for sharing that, and we deeply appreciate how much behind the scenes work goes on to make this happen. All right, any questions about the report from Dr. Gandhi or for Dr. Gandhi? Okay, moving on to our consent agenda, I would look for a motion. Robin,
I move approval of the consent agenda with the human capital addendum.
second. Thank you. Moved by Robin and seconded by Tracy. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Same sign. All right, thank you. The consent agenda has been approved. We'll move on to business. Our first order up for business comes to us through memo number 49, and I would look to Dr. Gandhi to introduce this for us.
Thank you. As part of our annual results monitoring process, this is the time that we monitor Strategic Initiative 3 related to student activities and their impact. In your board packet, you have our result monitoring report for our certification of making reasonable progress, but here today is also Todd Olson, FPS Student Activities Director, and I will hand it over to him to share whatever he'd like or answer any questions regarding Strategic Initiative 3.
Thank you very much. I put together kind of some summary slides of the data that's in your board packet. We each year do an annual survey of our participants. This year we had just less than 2,000 responses from our middle and high school students. Here's just kind of some demographic information. Over 3/4 of our kids said yes, they do participate, that responded to the survey. Pretty good breakdown by gender and school. Also good breakdown by grade. As is typical, about half of our respondents usually cite athletics as their main area of participation. And my favorite one is the number one reason for participation. It's fun, and it should be. So we ask a lot of questions about how they felt about their experience here. We talk about feeling connected and cared about, whether it contributed positively to our participants' character. And we ask them in all three areas: performing arts, athletics, and then academic activities or clubs. You see, as is usually the case, about 90% of our students are on the agree or strongly agree side for each of these responses, which is something we're very proud of. Here we talk about citizenship, sportsmanship, feeling safe during participation, all of those were strongly in the 90s. The communication one, that's one of the things I hear a lot. I'm not being well communicated with by my coach, director, advisor. And here, 96% of our kids think they were communicated well with. The next one is the knowledge of our directors, advisors, and coaches. Pretty strong there. Work with others and be a teammate, also strong. Our lowest response is be a better student because of their participation. And I think, as I think back to my kids participating and when I taught and coached, I think sometimes we get a little overwhelmed by the amount of time consumed participating. I think of our drama kids, and there's a couple really intense weeks. And I think of golf kids where our courses are only available during a school day, so they're missing in the spring and fall. A lot of them are missing a day a week to go out and participate. So I think those are some of the reasons for that. This is always interesting. Why didn't you participate if you chose not to? Typically, it's been about half just say they aren't interested or they're doing something else. After-school job has continued to shrink each year. When I started doing this, that was in the 20%. And now we're down in the lower teens. And then we ask them, what do you participate in that we don't offer? There are a lot of great activities in our community that kids have access to that aren't necessarily school activities. You can see there, Jenny's broken this down as to 1 to 10 responses, 11 to 25, and then the larger group didn't list anything. It's always kind of a way of us tracking. Is there something we should be doing that we aren't doing? Here's our GPA comparison, and you've seen this before. Consistently, kids that participate have a higher GPA than our overall student body and much higher than our non-participating students. This one I'm pretty proud of this year. Our number of team scholars, and that's the high school activities sponsors the Team Scholar Award for any team or group of participants if it's a music contest that has a 3.25 GPA or better. And this year we had 69 different groups qualify for the Team Scholar Award. I don't recall us ever being above 60, 61 in the past, so that was exciting to see. Here's just a recap of the state events that we're hosting in the community this year. It's going to be a busy fall and winter. The last one there is that new classification of basketball for those of you who have been following the 3-class discussion. So we're excited to see what that tournament looks like. I suspect that might be our largest state basketball tournament going forward. And since we don't have anything to base it on, we thought, well, we better go to the Fargo Dome and have the tournament, because if 7,000, 8,000 people show up, it's not going to fit in the shack. So that'll be kind of a, we'll see how it goes event, but we're excited about hosting that one. And that's all I have. Thank you for your continued support of a lot of activities that are really good for kids.
Thank you so much. That was really great. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Robin?
To start the discussion, I would move that we accept reasonable progress has been made on RS 1 through 3 for the 23-24 school year.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Robin and seconded by Nikki. Any discussion or questions? Yes, Nikki.
I don't think it's necessarily a question, but seeing these kinds of numbers and knowing that your numbers are ticking up as well reinforces to me that we're offering as much as we possibly can to our students. We're doing a good job of it. They're taking advantage of it as best they can, and it's serving them well in all aspects. And thank you to you, Todd, for coordinating it, and whomever else your team is on your team to do that. It's critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Craig?
So when I see this report, my thought and what I'm hoping for is for Todd or anyone in administration to confirm or deny or challenge this thought. My thought is that these activities go hand in hand with academic success. We see that students who participate are also, on average, performing better via the metric of GPA. And in my mind, that makes a lot of sense and it's pretty obvious to me. But part of the reason I'm asking is that I've recently heard comments that Fargo Public Schools may need to curtail some of our student activities and extracurriculars in order to focus more on academics. And to me, I see this report and think, well, activities enhance and serve our students' academic success. So I was just hoping to get some feedback on that notion from administration.
Well, I wholeheartedly believe they enhance the education of our students. I think just talking to kids, when they're in season, it seems like they're more focused, their attendance is better, they're, you know, all of the good things that we believe are associated with that.
Thank you.
I too have an answer to that. I was going to just wait till, thank you to IT from the back so I can screen share. No, I think, Greg, that's a really good question. And 1 second here. Sorry, let's get the code. So, you know, every year we monitor this strategic initiative, and the way that you'll see kind of Todd has set it up in the results monitoring report that's included in your board packet is the high level report and then what the data points that we're using to provide an analysis from. And in the appendix, you see all the different data points. But where we're moving to as a district is because there's so many different metrics and how you can measure the success, right? And if you take a look at our strategic initiative 3, and we kind of break down all of the data points, these are all of the different ways that we can look at just our student activity data to say, are we making an impact or not? So when we pick and choose, or when we provide an analysis on our result monitoring report, we want to really kind of take a look and show you that there might be a few data points that we're highlighting, but we're constantly analyzing different areas and different aspects of where we focus on, and then making improvements in our system as we see it too. So we have to have a system of like live data piece. Almost all of the 3 results or the subcategories that we take a look at tie into either academics or the sense of belonging that we're trying to create in strategic initiative 2. So even when you break down the different data points and then we further break it down by student demographic groups, by school groups and everything else, it's really for Todd and our activity directors to really take a look at what is the impact on student achievement, because that really is if you look at the overall result for strategic initiative 3, it really is to enhance the academic experience. So those are the pieces that we've seen a tremendous trend. Every other year, the district will either participate in youth risk behavior survey, or there is a group called Level Up that talks about at-risk behaviors for youth. And consistently what the data shows is that the higher students have a social capital index, which is a sense of engagement through an activity with either their school or their community, the less likely they are to behave in a or participate in an at-risk behavior, right? So one of the first pieces that you'll see is just our overall percentage of students that are participating in a co-curricular activity, because we know that that's that big piece too. But then you'll see that our other sub-measures as we look at this result really do focus not only on how the students feel from their activities, but both their own perceptions of whether their participation in athletic activities improve their ability to work with other people, be a teammate. But then, like Todd mentioned in his report, also taking a look at how many programs make honor roll by overall GPA, and then how many of our students win individual academic awards or team honors as well, and we're celebrating that. So that really is the ultimate focus for us, to make sure that we're hitting that result of ensuring that it is an enhancement to the educational experience. And Todd often says this, and I quote him more than he says it himself. But the reality is, like, when you take a look at our investment and student activities, the return on investment is so monumental because it gives the students a purpose and belonging to our schools, and for what we'll be able to provide in terms of like a diverse opportunity for all of our students. I think seeing that almost 70% of our 6th through 12th graders have something to participate in, and we're always looking for more opportunities. Like, we've expanded esports in the last three years or so. Just speaks volumes of a lot of his work and his leadership as well. But that is the ultimate focus for us, tying it back to their student.
Any other comments or questions? I think I saw Namal first.
Oh, this is not a question, Todd. I just want to say thank you. As a student athlete, when I was in middle school, high school, a little bit of it in college, when it comes to student academics, it's definitely go hand to hand because it definitely make you focus because you don't want to get drop off from the team where they expect you to do well. As a kid, when I was in middle school, I was expected to have a 3.0 or higher. So I had to really, really stand up off of it because I really wanted to participate and I wanted to be around my friends. So send up belong, it was really crucial. And I love my coaches and my teachers. Every time that I'm behind an assignment, I always feel guilty, because I feel like I need to get that assignment done because I want to play at certain levels. And so I just want to say thank you, seriously. I wish that, a lot of students can be able to participate a bit more, into the activity that we're offering here at Fargo Public Schools. So thank you.
Quick correction. I know our astute board secretary will correct my misreading of the original motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments or questions? All right, with that, I think we would be ready for a roll call, please.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, thank you. Motion passes. We'll move on to item number B on our business, the budget final approval, which comes to us through memo number 50. And Jim, if you would kindly introduce it, I would appreciate it.
I certainly will. Thank you.
President Berkland,
Yes.
do you ever want to take a break? You have 7 minutes before the,
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. So take a 7-minute break and then we'll start the hearing at 6. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's all. In compliance with the North Dakota Century Code 57-15-02.2, citizens will have the opportunity to present oral or written comments regarding the property tax levy for the Fargo Public Schools. So if you have public comments, please walk forward and address us at the podium.
My name is Scott Hennon. I am a resident of the Fargo Public School District. And I, like many citizens of Cass County, got my estimate of property tax and the budget hearing dates. And that's why I'm here today, because property valuation is up 10%. And there's a 8% increase in taxes being requested, the lion's share of which are coming from the Fargo Public School District. So I'm here to get answers on why those property taxes are as high as they are. I have several questions related to the 2022-2023 budget and how that compares to the 23-24 budget. Would you like me to stop after each question for an answer?
We are not answering questions. We're just hearing your public comments today.
So when will you address these questions?
I mean, under statute, I don't know that we're obligated to.
Well, wouldn't you want to answer the questions of citizens that have questions about why the budget is what the budget is? What purpose is a public hearing if nobody responds to anything that's raised as a question?
Well, you can certainly ask all of your questions and we'll make sure that we note them.
Right, but when will I get an answer on them?
I don't know.
You can't give an answer to a taxpayer about the budget. This is maybe why the budget is what it is. I would suggest at a minimum you should put on your website answers to these questions somewhere. Put somebody in charge of answering the questions, but let me ask them for the record, and hope that somebody elected by the citizens of the Fargo Public School District will have it within their decency to answer a few questions, which I don't think are that hard. For 2022-2023, the last budget year, not the one you're approving tonight, but for 2022-2023, I have $24 million more being spent by Fargo Public Schools than West Fargo Public Schools. That comes out to $14,965,000 per student in Fargo compared to $12,050 per student in West Fargo, and West Fargo has 1,000 more students. Why is the Fargo public school system that inefficient that a neighboring school district, which would have a lot of the same challenges that you have and issues that you have with 1,000 more students, spends that much less than Fargo Public Schools? I mean, I don't want my property taxes to go up, and it seems to me that we've got a best practice to follow here where maybe the cost could be lower. So I'd like to know why that is. Then I look at 23-24, and by the way, this is not easy. And I would suggest, I would hope some people elected again on this body would want citizens to be able to have information, to be able to ask informed questions. But I've got to dig into Memo 25, Memo 37, Memo 50 to try and put all the pieces of the puzzle together. You guys don't make this easy. You make it very difficult for citizens to try and find out what's going on. But I did find out that in 23-24, what's proposed, you're asking for over $200 million in expenditures. Am I correct? $19 million more than West Fargo again, with 1,000 less students, so $15,700 per student compared to West Fargo at $12,200 per student. Why? 2 years in a row. I'm also curious why you compare budgets to a preliminary budget, because there's reference in the memos to only a 2.2% increase in the property taxes that you're consuming. But if I look at the actual budget versus the actual budget you're about to approve, it's actually 13.4% higher than last year. So if I'm correct, 67 million versus 60 million in 22-23 increase, more property tax. In other words, $67 million of Fargo public school tax-paying citizens is what you're getting versus 60 million last year. That's a 13.4% increase. Is that correct? And if so, why? You've graciously bestowed upon the tax-paying citizens a mill levy reduction of 1/2 of one, it's small. A quarter mil is the property tax reduction. Meanwhile, you're getting that much more in actual property tax revenue. I think these are all fair questions that I'd like to see some effort to address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker can come up.
Hi again. Well, Scott took all of my numbers, so there's that. One thing I would like to add to his piece of information is in your budget, you've marked coming up 184 million and change for your purely educational cost, not other operating expenditures. Which if we took that as the cost to educate the child, not the other, what is it? 16 million and change. You're actually averaging over $16,000 a student. Something to think about. Especially considering that your metrics have been falling since 2019, including English language arts, math, science, graduation. Yeah. And you got $41 million currently sitting in your general fund. That could go a long way.
Thank you. Any other citizens?
My name is Glenn Knutson. I live in Fargo, Prairiewood. I had called the business office 2 weeks ago and was told I was going to be emailed a preliminary budget. It never came. I was told then that I could go on the website and find it. I went, I couldn't find it. Last year I brought up some concerns. One is the percentage of administration costs to teacher salaries. It's extremely high in my opinion. The superintendent mentioned at the last year's meeting that it was because of the problems with discipline that they have in the schools, that they had to hire a number of vice principals. I know that those problems are still continuing because I know people that are working in the schools that have told me what's going on. I am also concerned about the direction of the school's metrics. There are two forms of education, classical and progressive. The school board has chosen to go the progressive route. You're even starting a new school, which is going to be totally progressive. When I went to NDSU in 1972, the West Fargo school system did the same thing with, at that time, Berger Middle School. It was a total failure. The kids were allowed to do what they wanted to do at the rate they wanted to do it, and they ended up shutting the whole program down because nothing was happening in the kids' education. You have a huge discipline problem in the school. And yet at the same time, authority doesn't seem to be an issue because kids can be whatever they want to be in many of the classrooms. If they want to identify as a dog, they can identify as a dog. If they want to identify as the opposite sex, they can identify as the opposite sex. Transgenderism, transhumanism, Eastern mysticism are main themes of your educational process, and yet at the same time, you say you want to separate church and state, and Christian values cannot be part of the school system. I find this totally hypocritical, and I think that you need to examine why you have the discipline problems you do, why your metrics are dropping. A standard classical education teaches 2 + 2 is 4, teaches math to be math, going to algebra and on up the scale. It teaches English is English, how to compose a sentence, how to write a proper paragraph, how to communicate and talk properly. I know for a fact that in Fargo Public School System, they have advanced English students, which you do not want to impede the ability of the student to become all they want to be. And so spelling doesn't matter, sentence structure doesn't matter. And I would have flunked had I written in that form. I don't know if you're still doing it, but in the past you have done things like Dungeons and Dragons for young kids in some of the advanced classes. This is directly out of occult, it's religious. Secular humanism is the foundation of the Fargo public school education system. The United States Supreme Court has stated secular humanism is a religious system. The basis of it is evolution. Evolution is taught as fact, even though it's only a theory. And I'm not going to get into it tonight, but there's ample evidence to prove evolution does not exist, has never existed, and will never exist as far as macroevolution. But it's taught as fact. Creation cannot be taught in the Fargo belief system because that's supposed to be that's supposed to be religion. I want to tell you there's a direct correlation to the things that are happening in the Fargo school system and your abandonment of classical education, your embracing of progressive education, and you're telling kids things that are not true. I don't care how many hormones you pump into a kid, they'll always either be a girl or a boy. Either have XX or XY. And yet there are kids that are being encouraged in the Fargo public school system to identify as the opposite sex, and you do not know the harm that you may be doing to them down the road. Your job is to educate,
I think.
not to change.
the-
Thank you.
this-
These are, and all of this complies to your budget.
So it's about the property tax levied. So we just want to make
Yeah.
sure that our comments are very narrowly tailored to that.
Okay, and I just want to ask, how can you start a new school that's based on all of that? And it's not going to cost any more? It's not going to add to your budget? The teachers aren't going to matter in there? The facilities aren't going to cost any more? And what kind of education is going to come out of it? Those are my comments. I really do appreciate you listening and taking my comments.
Thank you. I'd invite other speakers to the podium if you have comments regarding the district's property tax levy.
Good evening, and I want to preface my remarks. My name is Charles Canning. I'm a resident of South Fargo, and I do appreciate a good, solid education. I had excellent teachers and coaches throughout my junior high and high school career. Had I not, I'd probably be a resident in one of the officers' gray bar hotels by now. So I do appreciate good, solid education. My concern is with taxes. I'm a retiree. In fact, now I'm semi-retired. I've had to go back to work due to inflationary trends and increases in property taxes. My personal home's property tax increased over 30%, of which the Fargo School District is a major portion of it. I don't know of any retiree or anyone in my neighborhood who's still working full-time, whether it be skilled blue-collar or white-collar jobs, receiving a 30% increase in their compensation. It just isn't happening. We're in strong inflationary times, on the verge of a recession, and you can tell every time you go put gas in your tank or go to the grocery store or go to Costco or wherever you go for your goods. So the middle-class community just can't keep affording these horrendous increases in property taxes. It just isn't going to work out. And I feel by looking at the budget, you probably have a little bit too heavily weighted administrative positions. Duplication that could be better handled by the principal and assistant principals of districts to handle a lot of the problems, or be turned over to social services. If you don't get control on this budget and stop these increases, what are you going to do when retirees and working people lose their homes because they can't afford to pay their taxes anymore? What's going to happen then to your funding? And what kind of example are you setting for the students in your school district by way overspending your budget and causing this kind of adverse effect on the body politic, so to speak, who are supporting you through their taxes? This kind of overspending. As the other gentleman pointed out, the West Fargo School District, who has horrendous bus routes in the country at high expense, is getting by at a much lower cost than the Fargo School District. So I just think you need to take a sharp knife to cutting the budget whenever you can. We've had to cut. We're not going places, not eating out, not doing things, not going to Arizona for the winter because of these inflationary times. We've had to make serious cuts. I've had to go back to work part-time just to survive these inflationary times, as have many other retirees. Just go to any big box store, see all the retirees working there. Lots of gray hair. One thing is we show up for work, so. But if you'd please take that into consideration and try to get this cut down, if not for this year, certainly for next year, because we just can't take any more of this. And there's a real movement going on to eliminate property taxes. And if you don't take action, that's going to light a match to get that, that property tax repeal put in force in the state, which could be adverse for school districts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment? Okay, seeing no other, we will close the public comment hearing portion of our meeting and move on to where we left off with Jim introducing us to memo number 50.
Thank you. I'm going to start by just giving a kind of a 10,000-foot overview of each of the funds, and then if there are specific questions on any of the adjustments from our preliminary approval, I'd ask Jackie to come up to the podium to address those. First and foremost, the big changes from when we approved this in July are a function of somewhat final valuations from the county. They could still change again on what the total assessed property value is going to be, which has increased what we're forecasting the property tax levy to bring in by about a little over 1.5 million. We also have adjusted the interest income line based upon where interest rates are in the market, and that is accounting for about $500,000 of additional revenue. And finally, the last major chunk is really the foundation, the state revenue that we get for the handicap program aid has been line itemed to come closer to what we're receiving for the past year in the coming year's budget. So again, about a $500,000 adjustment. So we've had an increase of about $2.7 million in revenue, and that has been allocated back into the expense side of the column, primarily into the salary and benefit line, to try and make some catch up, quite frankly, from where we've been the last few years on being able to pay our staff. So with that, I'll go through each fund and kind of give you a 10,000-foot overview of where it's looking and what we're forecasting for the fund balance at end of the year, assuming all the revenue is actually achieved and the expenditures happen as being forecasted. On the general fund itself, we're looking at total annual increase in revenue and an expenditure total, revenue total of 186 million, an expenditure total very close to that, so that we'll have an ending fund balance of $41 million and change, which represents about 22% of our general fund operating budget, and that's right in line with government accounting standards for recommended fund balance. The special assessment fund again went up based upon the increase in overall assessed value that we're hearing from the county, and we're looking at an estimated valuation increase there that will give us about a $1.3 million fund balance on the special assessment fund at year end. And we are going to reduce the levy for special assessment, as I think one of the speakers noted. So our total assessed levy will actually drop by 25 basis points or 25 mils for the coming year, and our total assessed levy would be 154 mils. Special levy fund also went up because of property tax valuations, and the fund balance estimated at year end there is going to be 425,000. That fund gets transferred over to the building fund and ultimately is used to pay for the brick and mortar of the district. Our debt service fund has had an internal premium carryover from our bond issue and really has got a zero fund balance as of the projected balance at year end. And finally, the nutrition service budget had a minor adjustment again due to interest expense, some adjustments on the expenditure side for salary and commodities. And again, we're looking at probably about a $4 million fund balance at year end there, down about $1 million from the year before. And that's by design. We're trying to keep that balance going to what the federal level would recommend, so we don't have to have increased costs to our students that are paying for their meals, lunches, and breakfasts. So overall, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the final budgets, levy a total of 154.13 mils for the school year 2023-24, and instruct administration to submit the certificate of levy to the county auditor.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Jim and seconded by Seth. Any discussion? Yes, Jim.
Well, I just want to take this moment in time to first of all thank Jackie, our business manager, and her entire team. This budget is a 12-month process to put together, quite frankly. And it isn't just the finance team that Jackie heads up. This happens all the way down to the building level, as each program and department figures out what their needs are for the coming year. So although we take the final action, there are, I'm going to guess, thousands of people hours put in by district staff to put this document together and to come to hopefully a balanced budget that we can hopefully deliver the services that we need. So thank you, Jackie, and pass that on to your team if you would.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you speak to the state-imposed deadlines for preliminary and final budget approval, please? And then perhaps how the ending fund balance is a recommendation?
Yep.
Thank you.
We are required by state statute to do a preliminary budget in July. Obviously, we don't even have closure on the current year when that happens, and we're still trying to finalize what's going to go on in property values. So that's a preliminary budget, which is reflected here. And then we have to certify, and I'll get the date wrong, we've got to send it in here pretty quick to the county auditor for the final budget, which is what we're approving tonight. In terms of fund balance, I think the recommendations by government accounting standards, which have to do with public entities, are typically you want to run probably 20 to 25%. And we're right in that zone right now. If we drop too low, and I think if we started to get below 15%, I believe we might find ourselves in a position where we have to borrow money short term because our revenue comes in not on a daily basis or even a monthly basis. Our state revenue comes in, I think, 2 payments through the course of the year, property tax as well. We have other revenue streams that obviously happen constantly, but we get big chunks of money at different junctures. When I first got on the board, we were borrowing several $1 million each year just to manage payroll in between those large deposits coming from either the county on property tax or the state on the foundation aid. So by design, this board for a couple of decades has moved us to the point where we have a fund balance and we don't have to borrow for operations any longer. Long answer to your question.
No, that was helpful. And I compare that to a household budget. You never spend your checking account down to zero because you need cash flow. Is that the purpose for the fund balance? Is that fair?
Absolutely. That is the purpose.
Thank you.
Even though we're showing a $41 million fund balance, I can assure you there are days in the checking account of Fargo Public Schools that we do not have a $41 million balance.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, with that, I believe we'd be ready for a roll call vote, please, Anne Marie.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, thank you. Motion passes, and we will move on to our next item for business, which will look familiar to you. Our postponed from the September 12th meeting, our strategic plan reapproval through memo number 40. So Dr. Gandhi, if you'd like to reintroduce this.
Sure. We annually update our strategic plan. We did make some tweaks after going through one monitoring cycle. Last year was our comprehensive refresh of our strategic plan. So you'll see in your memo that we did make some tweaks based on just necessities that we identified. One piece that we did add was a standard to Strategic Initiative 5 to make sure that we're utilizing a special education workflow analysis model to determine our staffing needs for special education. That was a product of the conversations that the board engaged with the FEA at the negotiations table. So definitely wanted to bring some attention to that. That work has already begun, but that is one of the pieces that we are looking to implement as we move forward as well. We're going to continue to work on our strategic plan, identifying what are those measures that we report out on the results and making sure that our work is aligned to the results that we want to get in our strategic plan, as well as we hear a lot about different metrics. There's so many different metrics that can assess what is successful or what is not for a school district. And as we've talked about before, a lot of things are, you'll get the results based on where we put our resources, our time, and our energy. So for us as a district, the focus is really meeting the results of our strategic initiative and then backwards planning on, if I had to present to the board today that we're making reasonable progress, using those indicators that the board has identified in their result policies, what am I going to show? And those are the measures that we identify early and then we'll constantly look back on and work on as a district. So they may differ from district to different or district, and different people may have different measures for success, but we really use that strategic plan as our guidepost because that tells us where to concentrate those efforts, how to allocate our budget, our resources, our time, energy, and our personnel as well. It's always going to be focused on those 6 strategic initiatives for us. So that is the introduction, and if you have any questions after the motion's made, happy to answer.
Great, thank you. Seth?
Just a point of order, since this is postponed, do we need to make a motion this evening, Anne Marie?
It was postponed, it wasn't tabled, so there's no motion to.
There's no motion on the table. Okay, I'll move that the board approve the updated strategic plan as provided in memo 40.
I will second that.
Thank you. Moved by Seth and seconded by Robin. Any discussion on this or questions? Yes.
I would just add that we had some nice discussion on this at the last board meeting, so this is just a minor change. So
Yes.
thank you for the full presentation.
Yes, thank you for noting that. We did discuss this before, but anything that came to mind in the last 2 weeks about this? All right, with that, then I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Holden,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Newman,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes, thank you. The motion has passed, and we will move on to our board reports. The first item is we are going to discuss some of our committee work goals. So I would ask that the committee chairs of each of the committees kind of just talk very briefly about some of your goals for the upcoming year. Maybe we can move around the dais. So could we start with you, Dr. Newman?
Sure. CEA has met for the first time, and we talked a little bit about our purposes and means. We talked about ways to increase transparency of how the full board is making decisions, specifically communicating around our long-range facility planning, perhaps part of the strategic plan. We're really looking to have board member presence at all of the FPS town halls that will be held. Depending on the topic, we'll have specific board members there based on their background and expertise. We're looking forward to having a school board member present at each one of the student superintendent, student cabinet meetings, or student council, I think it is, meetings, which will be really cool. Yeah, and just overall working to, enhance communication with community stakeholders, constituents. We talked a little bit about conveying sort of the board priorities around and values around the district budget and the ways and how we're deciding to prioritize certain things over others. So look for more from us. Thanks.
Great, sounds great, thank you. Seth?
Well, for negotiations, I would say first and foremost, our goal is to have a signed 2-year agreement very soon. I would say that's goal number one. It's quite obvious. I think moving forward, we tried to do things a little differently and more collaborative this time around. I think the time it took to take that approach was not estimated maybe very well on my part or on Mr. Kraft's part. But I think the process was even though we didn't get to impasse, I think the process overall was successful. I think we might have learned that there's probably some more efficient ways we can fix problems at the building level. I think that a lot of our problem solving that we were trying to do at the table, a lot of the results ended up not being contractual fixes to the problems. And I think maybe we could work closer with the building level to make sure that we get some of these problems solved that aren't contractual before we even get to the negotiations table. So I think I would entertain, a group discussion with the negotiations committee on how we can accomplish that with, and just not let everything sit at the table until we get to the table and be a little more efficient at our work. So I would say that's the main goal.
Great, thank you. Robin?
Thank you. Governmental Affairs Committee, we had our first formative meeting. We affirmed our means. During this less busy year, that since it's not legislative session, we will be monitoring interim activity and building philosophy statements to hopefully present ultimately to the board for approval to prepare us for the next legislative session.
Great, thank you. I will just very briefly talk about governance. My hope is that we continue to kind of be proactive in planning and that I partner with Dr. Gandhi and Anne Marie to make sure we kind of have a proactive and forecasting approach to the work that we're doing.
Planning has 0 goals for the year whatsoever, but we will be focused quite a bit on long-range financial planning based upon whatever we end up doing with our long-range facility plan. So I suspect that will absorb most of our committee meetings through the rest of this year. Obviously, as I said, the budget doesn't happen in one night. That process has already started again. Jackie probably is upstairs kicking numbers for the coming year. So we'll be immersed in that before we know it as well.
Great, thank you all so much, and thank you for your service as our committee chairs as well. We'll move on to our committee liaison and correspondence reports, and why don't we start at the other end? So Katie, would you like to go first and share?
Yeah, sure. The only update I have is attending the fact-finding meeting on September 21st.
Thanks, Greg.
I believe that might be my only update as well, is attending the fact-finding commission meeting.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you. September 18th, I think all of us were at the special board meeting. September 20th, I attended the NDSBA Lunch and Learn. September 21st, fact-finding, as you've heard others mention. September 23rd, it was a real honor Saturday morning to attend the Fargo North Hall of Fame inductee ceremony. That reaffirms to me that we are doing a lot of things right. And the 26th, today, at lunchtime, I had the honor also of attending the superintendent's student luncheon. And what a great group of kids. And again, fascinating conversation, and they're willing again to take on some tough topics. So I appreciated being part of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Nothing really to report. We had a planning committee meeting where we reviewed the adjustments to the budgets that we just approved. And I think I was at a governance meeting and a special board meeting as well.
Thank you so much. Robin?
Sure, governance meeting on September 8th. Governance meeting on September 18th, the governance meeting as well, the fact-finding commission. I attended the virtual North Dakota Lunch and Learn on September 20th, which was about new school board campaign finance rules. And then I am still playing phone tag with my very, very busy principals at each of my liaison schools. So hopefully soon I'll get in to visit.
Great, thank you so much. Seth?
Yep, on the 13th, myself and President Birkeland had a very productive meeting with FEA members, James Erlacher and Susan Clark. The following week, the 18th, Governance Committee meeting, the special board meeting, Planning Committee the next day, and then obviously on the 21st as well, with the Fact-Finding Commission meeting. Dean Rummel did let us know that we should be expecting their report on the 2nd of October. I have set up a negotiations committee meeting on the 5th of October to go through that report, and have reached out to the FEA to try and get a date set for us to meet after that. So that's it.
Great, thanks a lot, Seth. Namal?
On the 18th, I was able to attend the special meetings, and then also too, I was able to visit Lincoln. It was fun. It was fun visiting, and I get to meet the president, the statue, of course. So I get to meet the principals, the teachers, the students, because I went almost the end of the day. They show me around. I get to know that's where Tamara works. She's awesome. So this coming Thursday, we're gonna have Sambusa Day. And then also too, on the 21st, I was able to attend the North Dakota Education Fact Finding, even though I left early to attend my uncle's wedding. So thank you.
Thank you, Namal. Tracy?
Yeah, sure. As I said, CEA has met for our first meeting, and I wrote a CEA summary, I guess, in the newsletter pieces for the FPS district newsletters. Governance planning has met, special board meeting has been mentioned. And then yesterday afternoon, I did one of my liaison visits to the FPS Adult Learning Center in Agassiz, and it was just a real delight. I spent the afternoon there actually, and there's such enthusiasm in that building for the work that they're doing. It works very well to be in the spot they're at with all the, I guess, amenities. They have a hallway with every flag flown from countries of people they are serving, which is just really awe-inspiring. We went into classrooms and spent some time with some of the adult learners, and they just had nothing but gratitude and positive comments to make. So I was really grateful for my time there. And I think that's all I have to report. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. So as Seth mentioned, we had a really productive sit down with 2 negotiation committee members from the FEA last week. And then on Monday, the 18th, I had my liaison visit at Dakota High School, and I will just echo what you said about just being in the building of Agassiz. I got to watch a few students' classes in action, walked, I think, every floor with the principal and assistant principal. They're so proud of the work they're doing, as they should be. It was a really, really lovely visit, and neat to see the type of education that we offer and how we're meeting students where they are sometimes. And I'm really grateful for that. And they shared with me some of their goals for the year, and it was neat. It was a proud to be an FPSer that day. So then I went to the governance meeting, and then at 5 p.m. we had our special board meeting. The next morning I had planning, and then on Wednesday, as we mentioned a few months ago, we reopened the calendar committee, which I had been a part of because of our adjustments, and so we met and had a really productive conversation. Thank you, Dr. Gross, for leading that. And I feel like we will not be too far away from having a new calendar within our new guidance. So I'll look forward to sharing that with everyone. And then, as several have mentioned, we had our North Dakota Fact-Finding Commission on Thursday. And I think that's everything. So thank you. Moving on to 10, I would just ask Seth if we would be going into executive session.
There will be no need this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right. Our next regular meeting date is October 10th. It is 6:39 PM and we are adjourned.